Well, hello, and welcome back to Beyond the Compass, where travelers and the paranormal meet at the crossroads. I am your host, Eric Garcia, and today we're thrilled to welcome paranormal investigator and podcast host, Sophia Temperilli. Now, Sophia's journey into the world of the unexplained began when, at her own insistence, her parents took her on a ghost tour of the legendary RMS Queen Mary when she was just a child. A few short years later, Sophia would return to the Queen Mary, this time alongside none other than Zach Bagans and the Ghost Adventures crew. While diving deeper into the ship's chilling history, she encountered a malevolent spirit she dubbed the Shadow Man. Now, Sophia's childhood wasn't just marked by investigations. She grew up in a house teeming with supernatural activity, sparking a lifelong passion to uncover the truth about the unseen. By age 12, she had launched her own paranormal radio show, The Ghost Host, which just recently celebrated 13 years on the air, and that is just amazing. She has become a respected voice in the field, interviewing leading figures in the paranormal research community and sharing her own unsettling experiences, which have been featured in publications like Women on the Fringe, Groundbreaking Women in the Paranormal, and Ghosted magazine. From living among restless spirits to collaborating with some of the biggest names in the paranormal field, she has a unique perspective on hauntings, spiritual activity, and the lingering energy of the past. Join us as we dive into Sophia's captivating story and the insights she's gained from a lifetime of exploring the other side. Sophia, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me on.
Awesome, yes. Now, so let's just jump right into it. Given these unusual experiences you had when you were so young, at what point did you know that investigating the paranormal was going to be the path for you?
I mean, I feel like I've always just kind of had an interest in like spooky things, even from a young age. One of my favorite movies when I was younger was Sleepy Hollow. I loved Scooby-Doo. So, I mean, I think
We
it
all
was
got
kind
started
of,
with
yeah,
yeah,
I think I
Scooby.
was kind of just born into it a little bit.
Yeah, we all got
And
started with Scooby Doo.
yeah, so I think it kind of just happened really naturally for me. And then my parents, like you were saying in the intro, went on a ghost tour to the Queen Mary for their anniversary. I'd gone a lot of times when I was younger, but it was their first like official ghost tour, not just the like fake Ghosts and Legends tour that they have, which I apparently thought was funny, which I'm sure is really creepy for people to see like a toddler laughing at all of those effects. Um, and so they were going for their wedding anniversary on a tour with Peter James from Sightings. He was hosting
Yes.
ghost tours there. And for some reason, I just got really jealous and I said, okay, why can't I go? I want to go. So after their tour, Peter gave his email out to everyone who took the tour, and my dad wrote him and said, hey, our 8-year-old daughter really wants to go on the dinner and investigation. Is it safe for her to go? And he wrote, there's over 500 spirits on this ship, and all of them are my friends. So the next time, which would happen to be Peter's final tour, I went on my very first investigation. And yeah, that's pretty much the genesis of my paranormal experience. I mean, that night, Peter asked my father to co-author his biography for him, Heaven Can You Hear Me? And a lot of my childhood was spent going to paranormal events and promoting Peter's life work and living in a haunted house and then starting a radio show. So it kind of all happened really naturally through a progression.
Wow. So his last show was your first investigation.
Yes, his final tour was he was struggling with like lung problems. I think it was like emphysema or something. And so he did his final tour, and on that tour he asked my dad to co-author his book, and that was in May of 2007, and Peter passed away in July of that year.
Wow. I didn't know that part, that it was his last and your first investigation. To me, that just, in a cool way, it sounds like he was passing the torch onto you. Have you ever felt that way?
I mean, it's kind of hard to say, because I mean, really for me, I did start so young. I've never seen sightings to this day. I mean, I've seen the clips from like his tours and stuff. So for me, it was really starting in the paranormal based on my passion. I know my dad in a lot of ways kind of feels like it was a passing of the torch. Because, their date nights were sightings and X-Files. And for me, I mean, I always had an interest, but I didn't grow up in that same era. So for me, he was very nice and it was nice to meet him, but I didn't know him in the way so many others did.
Right. Well, it sounds like you knew him, on a more personal level, and that's really sweet. I mean, I like that. Now, do you think growing up in a house, because I was watching a couple of your previous interviews, and you went into some detail how even though you did grow up in a haunted house, there were times it was quite traumatizing. And do you
Mhm.
think that gave you an edge in understanding the paranormal, or do you think it made you more vulnerable to it?
I think it's a help and a hindrance in a lot of ways. I mean, it helps because it makes me, I would say, view the paranormal more cautiously. Like, I say this on a lot of shows as an example, but I'm not gonna go put myself on like Goat Man's Bridge or something. I don't have a desire to go learn the darker side of the field or demonology or anything. Like, that is not my cup of
Same
tea
here.
because I lived in a haunted house and for me it was every single day. Like, yes, I was into creepy stuff like Sleepy Hollow when I was younger, but to this day, I don't watch horror movies. I don't do any of that. And I think a lot of that comes from kind of living in fear every day for years.
So
And it
you're
helped me, yeah, like understand the field on a deeper level because it's one thing when you're going out and investigating, and it's another thing when you live with it. So I think it made me appreciate having personal time and downtime away from the paranormal. But where it becomes a hindrance is like say when I did an SD session once, I I don't think I opened myself up enough for that to work because I'm too worried about what could attach itself to me.
right.
And so I'm a little bit more cautious in the way I investigate, which I would say is helpful because I don't want to bring anything back, but also a hindrance because it doesn't allow me to open myself up the way others do on investigations.
Right. And for those of you watching or listening that may not be familiar with it, the ST session, or sometimes as it's known, the S-test method, is it's a test where two people, one's wearing noise canceling headphones and a blindfold, and the only thing they can hear is the EVP radio that they're plugged into, and someone else, like in another room or a few feet away, is asking the questions. And so the person wearing the noise canceling headphones, all they're hearing is what the EVP recorder is saying. So a lot of people swear by this test. I've yet to try it. I'm very intrigued by it, but so that didn't necessarily work for you.
No, I think I don't know if it was I've only done it once. So I mean, I don't have like tons of trials to say exactly, but I would think I didn't get anything on the
Mhm.
first time I did it, which was on the Queen Mary for a Dark Zone event. Which I think was just me being probably not as open to wanting to receive stuff as an individual. Um,
So you probably instinctively had your defenses up in a sense, and maybe they could
yeah.
see it's like, okay, maybe
So
not tonight. So I mean, and that is actually kind of refreshing to hear from you that you don't want to dabble in the crazy stuff because
no.
given your age, because you're only like 25, if I may
Yeah, I'm
ask, yeah.
25.
So given your age, and then you see all these other paranormal YouTubers out there running to these places, screaming their heads off, laying on autopsy beds and doing all this other crazy stuff, saying "Come on to me" and inviting all this stuff. Whereas you're like, no, you really don't want to do that. So to see someone like your age having an awareness of that and the risk of it, it's it's actually refreshing to see and hopeful. Now,
Thank you.
absolutely. And I mean, I didn't grow up around we had an open mind to it growing up because I'm
Mhm,
Native American on my mom's side. So through her, we all had to us, it was never are ghosts real? It was more, okay, who are they? You know?
mhm.
And so while we didn't experience to the level that you did, we had a very open mind to it, and we were always very cognizant of not disturbing something that we didn't see or understand. So yeah, definitely. Now, do you ever think about the stories that the spirits carry with them and how much of it might be tied to what they leave unresolved in life?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I think more as an adult than I did as a child, because kids just they have interest in stuff, but I would say maybe there's not as much thought put into things. So I would say that's definitely one difference between being a child investigator and an adult. And for me as an adult, I have a greater reverence and interest in the history that comes along with these locations and people, versus just when I'm a kid I'm like, oh cool, ghosts, like, and so for me, I do have an interest in their story more so now, than even before. In the past few years I've really just been captivated by, these ghosts are almost like a fingerprint. There's something that you can study, and they're individuals, and learn their story even though they've passed on. And I think that's really important, is these spirits aren't just there, but they can, n- I mean, it's hard to say what a spirit is exactly, but if you're talking to the person you think you're talking to, you could get answers on who they were as a person that maybe they weren't allowed to say when they were alive, or they couldn't figure out because there wasn't words back then. And so I think there's so many things left unsaid when people die, and I think with ghosts there's so much that they can still tell us.
Exactly. And it sounds like your understanding of it comes with maturity, and you
Yeah.
gain that early on because you've been doing this so long and you started at such a young age. And that was a really interesting way you phrased it. That ghosts are like fingerprints. I mean, that's very unique. In fact, you should make that your logo. Put it on your business cards. Sophia Temperilli, ghosts are like fingerprints. Um, Now, because my questions sometimes kind of get a little like out there, so fair warning.
Yeah. No, you're good, you're good.
So some people believe that time isn't linear and that
Hmm.
ghosts might actually be moments from the past playing out. Have you yourself had an experience that felt more like time travel than a haunting?
I can't say that I have. I mean, I don't know if I could say that. I would say maybe possibly experiences with residual energy, but I don't know on the spectrum of time travel. But I also think I would probably need to be a much smarter person to answer that on like a quantum physics level or something. Like
You don't have your
whatever
physics
Ant
degree? Oh,
no,
interview's
whatever
over. I'm sorry.
whatever Ant-Man does. I don't even have the Black Widows. I can talk quantum physics in casual conversation. So I feel like on time travel would be super cool. I would love to experience that, but I don't think I have the science background to adequately answer that
Right.
experience.
Have you ever heard of the grandfather paradox?
Uh yeah, I have. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was what it's right, like you go back in time and meet your grandfather, and the things you do create you not to exist based on
Well, the,
that.
the, the grandfather paradox roughly is, say you went back in time, met your grandfather, became friends, but then had an argument, and you ended up shooting and killing him. So the question remains, if he died before he had your father and before you were born, how could you ever be born to go back in time to kill him?
Mhm.
So that's what they call the grandfather paradox. Like I said, I'm sorry, my questions go all over the place. So now, what's really impressive, I mean, you started your radio program when you were 12,
Mhm.
and that's while it's impressive, it's also a huge commitment. I mean, what's kept you going all these years, even when it kind of got tough?
I mean, well, I had definitely had a tough spot recently. We were having some issues with the switchboard. My show in the past has been done live every week. When I started, the shows were actually 2 hours long because we thought that's what you did. We thought you had two guests and did 2 hour shows. And then we realized that people didn't do that, so we cut them back down to an hour. So it's been definitely a journey. Recently, we had to switch from live shows. We took callers and everything, but the site was kind of crashing a lot, and it just wasn't feasible to work anymore. So we switched to pre-recorded. But I would say what's kept me going is really just the fascination for the unknown and these stories that people hold, and getting to hear about locations I've never heard about. And I know your show's about travel, but since I did start so young, I don't have a lot of the investigative experience that maybe some others have in the field, because, you know, I'm in school. I don't have like
Right.
thousands of dollars to go to the East Coast. I live in California. So I don't have maybe as many places accessible to me. And so I get to hear and learn more about the paranormal through other people's stories and adventures than, you know, I could experience as an 8 or 9-year-old. I know I started at 12, but like, you know, there's just so much that you don't get to experience when you're that young, understandably. But, you know, life gets in the way a lot, and getting to hear about places, you know, that I would have never known existed, even if I had been traveling all over, I think is really such a driving force for me, is just getting to understand, other people's thoughts and theories and experiences in the field. And knowing, I had a woman message me actually recently on Twitter, and she heard one of my interviews I did, where someone was interviewing me, and she liked hearing about my haunted house. She said she was going through something similar with her child, and even though it sucked for her to hear that I had gone through it as a child, it also, you know, kind of comforted her in the fact that knowing someone else went through it. And
Someone could
I
relate.
think for my show, there's so many people on there that may not have had the exact same experience as me, but have had similar. And there's so many people in the world, even guests I have on, that I've never shared their experience. Someone out there has, and it brings a lot to other people to know that they're not alone in a field that is so unique. Is it time travel? Is it residual energy? I don't know. Is it Bigfoot? Is it a UFO? And so many people have experiences that maybe I can't relate to, but a guest on my show can, and it helps people in a certain way that I couldn't if it was just me.
Right. What part of California, if I may ask?
I'm in LA.
Oh, I used to live in LA. Yeah, I'm in Austin now. I've been here about 3 years, but I lived in Studio City, San Fernando Valley. So if you want, I can shoot you an email later on with a list of places in the LA area and California in general, Arizona, Nevada, that you could check out. Be like a weekend trip.
For sure. Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in LA, I mean, look up just off the top of my head, picnic table number 29 in Griffith
Hmm.
Park. And I actually did a video on that and had something, it's one of my earliest videos. And that's back before I had any of this equipment. I was actually filming started my channel using my phone. And I was filming a video up there about the legend of that table. And I caught something, a weird audio that actually, something took out the audio when I was talking about it. It was kind of strange. But check out Picnic Table number 29 in Griffith Park. That would be a great place to start, and it's local. But I digress. Now, on the flip side, to being dedicated to the show and being consistent with it for all these years, it can take a toll on the personal life. That can be challenging. How do you manage that balance? What keeps you motivated?
Well, I'm a gamer, so it's pretty easy for me to manage my interests, because I can game before, after a show. I'm generally kind of a homebody, so that hasn't hindered me too much. You know, I have the great support of my parents.
Awesome.
My dad has helped me. He books guests every week. You know, starting at 12. Obviously, your parents gonna handle communications, and my dad was like, when I turned 18, he's like, "Oh, you want to take over?" And I'm like, "You're doing such a wonderful job, though." So it's
Why
really been
interrupt your flow?
why would I dare take that from you, Dad? Such good bonding. But it's
Father
really been
daughter time.
yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, he can't get rid of me, so he's kind of stuck with me. He's like, "Someone take her," and I'm like, no." Yeah, I've been really lucky with a family that supported me. We all did start in the paranormal at the same time, but like I said, my dad's helped me with my show ever since it started. My mom keeps the family together, making sure we're fed and everything. So I've just been really lucky to have a very comforting and good support system within my family. I can go to them for anything, and they're always there to help me, whether it's set up, find guests, help me with shows. Like I said, we do pre-records now, so
It's so much easier. I mean, you can I've been doing this from the beginning as pre-recorded, and I told some guest a couple weeks ago, it's like if this was live, I'd be in big trouble.
Well,
Big
I
fan.
got pretty used to live. I mean, I've said some kind of stupid stuff over the years, but luckily it's been buried in the 13 years of shows. So, I mean, I got pretty used to live shows, but my dad loves it. He likes not being a part of it at all because he was doing the switchboard and stuff, and I would be interviewing, so he's very happy to not have to deal with that section of it anymore. And but like I said, I've just been really lucky with two parents that have supported me along the way. And that's
It
kind of how I keep my personal life in balance, is really just having a family that I've been lucky and fortunate enough to have been given.
That's amazing, and it sounds like your parents would make good guests for your show. Like
But
mom,
my
dad, come
mom's
on.
like, I don't want anything to do with it. Just stick me in a corner. She was actually there the night we filmed with Ghost Adventures. She was literally in a corner. She did not want to be on camera.
Yeah, and great segue. That was actually my next question. So you've had the opportunity to investigate. I just watched the episode last night. Wow, you were such a kid in that episode. I mean, what were you, like 15 or something?
Yeah, I was 15. It was filmed actually the very final day of my freshman year of high school.
Wow. So you filmed with Zach Bagans and the Ghost Adventure crew like early on in your paranormal career. How did that collaboration come about, and what insights did you gain from it? That are there any that you still keep with you to this day from that experience?
Yeah, so we had met Zach and Aaron many years ago at an event. So I had met them prior, just briefly. They were super kind to me. I was probably about 11 years old. It was pre-radio show and everything. And just through being in the paranormal circuit with my dad's book, my parents actually became really good friends with Debbie Constantino.
Hmm.
And so, like, shortly after they met, they did an investigation on Alcatraz with her. They wouldn't let me go. I was 9. I digress. So they were really that was my mom's best friend. I mean, her and
Oh
Debbie,
wow.
they talked all the time. My mom had actually messaged her on the day that she died. So they were
Yeah,
very close friends. And when Debbie was down here for the episode, she was telling everyone in production and Zach, you have to have the Temperillis there because of our history with Peter. So she was really kind of the driving force between us being there. And then I was in art class literally on my final day of freshman year, and my dad had gotten a call from Ghost Adventures, and then I was in class and I got a text, hey, we got asked to be on Ghost Adventures, we're gonna go to the Queen Mary tonight. So I went from my final day of freshman year, Nordstrom's to find an outfit, and then to the Queen Mary. That's how my day went. And yeah, I mean, really that all came about through Debbie and her insistence on having the history of the ship, and Jackie told through people that kind of knew Peter's story the way that my father did. So they were kind enough to ask us to be a part of the investigation in the pool area, and they had me call out to the ghost there. They were trying to reach Peter, and we caught some really amazing evidence. And I would say that
I
the
saw
thing that
that.
kind of, yeah, it was
Yeah.
crazy. It was
Kind of
really
foul
crazy.
mouth at the same time too.
Yeah.
Like
Oh yeah. No, that was really really interesting. It was crazy. It
I'm
doesn't
watching that and
surprise
I'm
me.
like, I'm thinking, oh, that's not polite.
Well, like I said, the Shadow Man's there. I would honestly, if he was nice, I would probably have been more shocked. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was really through her, and what I took away from that really was not only just a great experience, because I think that was actually the last time we had seen her in person.
Oh wow.
We might have had maybe one other event after that, but just really good memories from friends, but also such an amazing experience to see how they work, see equipment I've never seen before. It was the first time I saw an X Connect in person, and so it was really interesting to just see the way that, kind of these
Production.
very detailed investigations go on, because they have equipment a lot of people don't have, and cameras to capture this. So it was really just getting to see the behind the scenes of how, I would guess, really really intense investigations go, and a different perspective on the pool area itself, and kind of how the Shadow Man operates.
So, for those that are not familiar with the Queen Mary, I mean, you can look online. The ship has got an incredible history to it. It was put into service during World War II. They actually painted it gray, and they called it the Gray Ghost. There was a horrible accident at sea that ended up killing over 300 sailors from another ship. I mean, there's a grim history. And I mean, when Peter said that there's 500 ghosts on there, I mean, given the experience, everything that's happened, I believe it. But one of the hot spots on the ship has been said there's a room B340 or something like that, and the pool area. And I think
Mhm.
that's where you did the majority of your filming was in the pool area. And the story goes that it's haunted by the ghost of a little girl. But there was some skepticism to that, I noticed in the episode. Do you yourself think it is the spirit of a little girl, or do you think it's something that may be posing as a little girl?
I mean, like I said, I can't say for sure who exactly I'm talking to at any given time. I would say, given the evidence, I would think it's a little girl. I think where the large amount of skepticism comes from is the fact that there are no recorded records of a child dying in the Pula area. Um, but then you have to take into account stowaways and stuff. I couldn't really tell you kind of where she would have come from. And I think that's really where the skepticism comes about, is how she would have gotten there. Um, but maybe she passed on and just liked it, passed somewhere else, like the Queen Mary came back. I'm not sure. But I think that's kind of where that came from in the episode. And in terms of B340, one thing I have heard is that actually used to be a room rented out by Disney and was an attraction in the 90s. Not to say it's not haunted. I mean, the whole ship's haunted, so, but I've heard that the actual true room that kind of has that history is B474. But B340 has that history due to kind of, I would say, like a telephone, at least from what my knowledge is on the ship.
Yeah, because they play up that room so much. It's like, what is it, like eight
Yeah,
hundred
I
dollars a night or something to rent or
yeah,
something crazy like that?
I heard it did used to be rented out as an attraction though. So it was
Yeah.
specifically set up for that, like years ago, and then deconstructed some point.
Okay. So over the years, now you've interviewed many of the top names in the paranormal field. Are there any particular interviews or guests that stand out to you? And if so, why?
I mean, I've I've just been really fortunate to make so many friends through the show. So I would say that the shows that stand out to me are the ones that I've been able to connect with the guest afterwards and really build a lifelong friendship. Like I said, through paranormal events, my mom became best friends with Debbie Constantino, but I mean, as a family, we've had that happen through my radio show, paranormal events. And so for me, I'm just lucky anytime I get to talk to someone that is like family to me. I mean, you have kind of like a paranormal family and community that I've grown through the years. And it's just one thing that I can't really pick a favorite or anything, because I have interviewed so many really cool people. I mean, my very first guest on my show was Alexander Holzer, Dr. Hans Holzer's daughter.
Oh wow,
So I
that's a
got
that's a
yeah.
that's a good one. I would love to interview her. That's great.
Yeah, so I've just been really fortunate, and I wouldn't want to put anyone over the
Right.
other, because I have been really lucky. And just ones that I'm really excited about is people that have become family to me through the years of being on my show.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, I've noticed that myself at like I go to like all kinds of conventions of, comic book conventions, Star Trek, Supernatural, and all those. And I've been to a few Paracons. And what's interesting about a Paracon is like everyone is so friendly. You know,
Yeah.
given the macabre interest everyone has there, ghost and true crime and monster, whatever. Everybody's just really friendly. Like, hey, they're inviting. They're like, hey, check this out. And I just think people on the outside would be surprised to see just how, in a sense, kind of welcoming the paranormal community can be. Really.
Yeah, well, it definitely has its trials and tribulations, I will say that, but I think a large part of the people in the community, want to collaborate and kind of together figure out the answers they may have to the afterlife. And I've just been really lucky to have met so many great people. Like, I've had a weird upbringing. A lot of the people in my life that I can call good friends or psychics, and I don't think many people can do that. So for me, it's never been like abnormal. Like, it's still crazy when they get like things right that they shouldn't know, or it's amazing just to see their abilities, but I've had kind of the unusual upbringing where for me it's kind of normal. My mom always used to say I'm like Marilyn Munster.
That's good. I haven't. You know what? That makes a lot of sense. I like that
Yeah,
reference.
I get
Um,
Wednesday Addams a little more now, so I don't know if I should be worried.
well, as long as your hair is not too dark, you should be fine. Now, of your guests or stories that are there guests or stories that have completely surprised you, or do you feel like you kind of heard it all by now?
I would say, genuinely, the stories that have surprised me the most are the stories of danger on locations, and I'm not talking about paranormal danger. I've had a guest come on the show that said they sat on a rusted nail at a location. I had a guest come on that say they stepped on the tail of a cougar, thinking it was a camera wire. So I would say the ones that surprise me the most are typically the ones that actually don't involve the spirits because, ow.
Yeah, I remember there was an early episode, one of the early seasons of Ghost Adventures, and they're investigating this huge, abandoned, rusted out factory. I mean, the place was
Mhm.
massive, and it's dark in there. And you see on camera, I think it was Zach Bagans, or Nick Ruff, one of them were just kind of walking and talking. They weren't really looking where they were going, and then the other grabbed him, like, stop. And he said, look down. And had he kept walking, he would have fallen into this deep pit that was probably 30 feet deep. I
Mhm.
mean, it was like he was like a foot away from falling to his death. It
Yeah.
was crazy. Yeah. So, I mean, take lights with you.
Yeah,
Be aware of your surroundings.
we've seen some instances like that on the Queen Mary. You look down, it's just a sheet of plastic, and if you step wrong, you're gonna fall like 100 feet. So it's I would definitely say for people interested in investigating, please do try and keep your eye out, not just for the ghosts, but the physical aspects, because you can fall and get hurt. Yeah, so
Now,
and those are the ones that surprise me. It's the things
yeah.
where I just go, God, I don't want that.
Now, kind of along those lines, of the places that you have investigated yourself, has there been one place where you thought, okay, this is too much. I'm not coming back here again?
The Queen Mary pool area. It's not the only place I've ever investigated, but after that night with Ghost Adventures, I can definitely say that I don't have a desire to go into the pool area again. I mean, I've been to the Queen Mary a lot of times, so I also seen it a ton, so it's not gonna hurt my feelings.
So
But
you're like
the
one and done, and you're good.
well, yeah, I've been there. I was there like a lot when I was younger, so I've probably investigated there hundreds of times. But the Shadow Man seemed to get stronger having the lights out, which I know sounds crazy. It does to me too. I can't explain it. But he seemed more powerful. It was like he was in multiple places at once. And after that investigation, I went back a different time, and I felt that if we stayed in the blue area, something bad was gonna happen. And I just don't want to deal with it. Like, he doesn't like me, I don't like him. There's nothing we're really gonna get from each other that's gonna help either of us. So there's tons of other. I love the engine room. I'd rather go the engine room. But besides the Queen Mary, my old haunted house, you could not pay me enough money to go back there. Don't want to go back there.
So we're not going to see a Discovery Plus special. Sophia Temperilli goes back to the home where it all started.
Oh
We're not
God,
going
no! You could light it on fire. I don't care.
to. So no emotional attachment.
Bulldoze
Got it.
it. I just don't care what happens to that place. You're not gonna catch me near it.
So now, do you find yourself, excuse me, uh, do you find yourself more drawn to places with tragic histories or those with more mysterious origins?
I don't know. It kind of just depends. I think I'm drawn to places, because like I said, I do live in LA County. I'm drawn to places that I'm not gonna find in LA. Places that are not I can find just around my corner. I mean, there's really cool places. I've never been to the Roosevelt, but I would love to go there. I love old Hollywood and that type of history. So I won't say that it's all of LA, but I mean, when you see these penitentiaries and insane asylums and these old Victorian homes that are in the Midwest and East Coast, that's not stuff you can find here, really. And
Hmm.
I'm really
That's true.
drawn to the fact that there's so much out there that I've never seen, whether it's haunted or not. And just, the history behind it, the way that people built stuff differently, Gregorian style, Victorian. I mean, there's so much in the architecture that I find fascinating. So it's not just the ghosts that draw me, it's also the location themselves, because there's so much beauty, not just in these older places that have been kept up, but also in the abandoned. And I think there's just so much beauty that can be found in these older locations.
Okay, so as far as the locations go, a lot of times they say, the paranormal is tied to energy and intention. Um, has there been a location that you walked into and you felt the energy change as if it was aware you were there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not psychic, I'm definitely a sensitive. So I've had that probably at a lot of locations. I would say one of my weirdest experiences was at the Glen Tavern Inn. Like I said, I love old Hollywood and old movies. I watch TCM, so that's kind of like my thing. And
Oh, I have a movie. I'm sorry, I have a movie suggestion for you. Don't even forget that if you like old movies along the lines, I think you would. The Uninvited came out in 1944. It's one of the best ghost story movies I've ever seen. The effects for the time are amazing. It actually looks like, yeah, that's what a ghost would look like. But you should check out The Uninvited from 1944.
I'll
Sorry.
have to check it out. I still have like brief encounters on the list because I heard Jenna Ortega and Winona Ryder talking about it. I was like, I've never heard of that, and I was like, wow, I'm slacking, gotta catch up. But yeah, they have old movie posters all around the Glen Tavern Inn. I have not even the slightest idea why, to be honest. I don't know if it's people that have stayed there or what, but I was walking down on the first floor. There's a hallway to the right hand side, and I wanted to walk down it and look at old movie posters. So my mom and I were walking down the hallway, and the farther down the hallway and my throat was getting tighter and tighter and tighter, and I thought, okay, I don't want to find out what happens when I walk to the end of the hallway, because when I'm investigating, sure, that's one thing, but when I'm trying to be a normal person, just want to be left alone. And
You're like, hey guys, it's my day off.
like I
Can we like?
said, I mean, I was there for a paranormal event, but like I said, living in a haunted house, you learn to appreciate not having spirits during certain moments. And so I told my mom, she's like, I'm gonna go ask the front desk person, who's actually Brandon Alvis, from Haunted Discoveries. And I said, please, let's not. And she went anyways and did it. And she goes, what happened down that hallway? He goes, oh, the groundskeeper hung himself 5 years prior.
Oh, wow. And you were
Yeah.
feeling something around your throat or in your throat.
Yeah. And I was
Oh,
being super normal. Like I said, I think when I'm investigating, I close myself off a little more than when I'm being normal. So I think that's probably part of my problem of why I have this happen when I'm trying to be normal. And but I was also doing an investigation in a ghost town, was actually investigating. So that wasn't an occurrence where I was trying to be left alone. But I felt something to the left of me, and I go, hey, I just feel like I should say it. I feel like there's something over here. She goes, oh, we had a psychic here, and they said someone hung themselves over there. And I was like, great. So that's my second hanging, apparently, I've picked up. So that's wonderful. Great talent. So that's
specific too.
it's
Very.
very specific. I don't know what that one's about, but sure.
Just
So
avoid any trees, anything like that. You should be
yeah,
good to
so
go.
it's great. So that's one of apparently my talents. And so yeah, I mean, I definitely have instances where I feel like ghosts know I'm there. Like I always say on my show, or just in general, if a ghost wants you to know it's there, it will. If they don't, you won't. And that goes for me too. I'm not psychic, so I can't walk into a building and tell you who or what's there, but I can kind of sense things like a fire alarm. It'll go off, probably not helpful beyond that. And
So you have a spider sense.
it's like a spider sense. And so I can
I wish I had a
generally
spider sense, man. That'd be
I
so helpful.
wish that it was for actual spiders, because I don't want them around me. But I can tell when something is there, and usually if it's good or bad, I can kind of know that too. So when I go to locations, I think if a spirit wants me to know it's there, it will. And I've had that in many locations, whether it was the Glen Tavern Inn or the ghost town I investigated in Montana. It's really just kind of been an occurrence for me. I was the one who noticed the ghost in our haunted house And so it's just kind of been like that, I think, my whole life, even during times I can't remember.
Wow. Now, I'm gonna ask, at this point, since you started so young with it and you've been dealing with it, you know, professionally and just in your own time, are there steps that you take to protect yourself or like
Mhm.
defenses against unwanted, activity with these spirits?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I fully respect people that do. I know a lot of people have protection that works for them, but after living in a haunted house, I felt that there was nothing that could protect me. I was scared in every moment in time. I didn't have time to myself. If I played video games, there he was. If I watched YouTube, there he was. Doing homework, there he was. Changing, there he was. And so for me, I don't necessarily believe in protection because I think if a ghost really wants to harm me, it's going to do it. And I mean, I wish I believed in it, but I don't. And for people to do, I think that's wonderful. I will never shade anyone for that. But me personally, I don't think anything, if it wants to harm me, I don't think there's anything that can protect me.
Wow. Interesting perspective, because usually I get people going, "Oh yeah, I do this. I either use holy water or I pray or this or that," and I have a few things I use myself. Just, it's part of like, again, the way we grew up, that we've always been very
Mhm.
open to it. But that's an interesting perspective you have, and it's very like you sound like you stand your ground when it comes to that. Come what may, it's like, okay, whatever's going to happen is
Well,
going to happen.
it comes down to the fact that we I mean, we had teams come out to our house. We had people sage our house. I had people telling me when I was a child, you need to stand your ground. Tell the ghost you don't want this and I'll leave you alone. Well, I'm scared of him. This is a grown man watching me. I'm not going to fight back. I'm not going to tell him to go away because I don't know what the repercussions are. And so for me, it was not something I could live with. I was very fortunate I moved out, but it also, I guess, made me kind of jaded in the fact that I did not feel
Understandable.
safe or protected at any point in time. There was no one that could help me. There was nothing I could do, and I was just lucky that when I moved out, it did not follow me. And I fully support people doing whatever they want because if it works for someone, that's awesome. But for me, I just feel like I would be fighting against something that isn't going to help in the end. Kind of like in The Mummy, how that guy was pulling out different medallions until the mummy stopped at one point. It's like, what am I going to try and then find out it works or doesn't? And that's just kind of where I'm at. And I ask people the same question on my show because people listening may want to try that or find something that works for them, and maybe different things work for different people. But in my case, I didn't feel protected, and I don't know that anything could protect me.
Yeah. For me, I've always, and a couple of different instances over the years with just myself, people in my family, even strangers one time, I found that iron works, iron and salt at
Mhm.
windows sills, above doorways. There's a story I can tell you about that at a later time. And this was a person who had no idea of the paranormal. And they're like, yeah, I know my apartment's haunted. And I'm like, well, how? And they told me, and I'm like, well, they used to put short version, they used to put nails above windows and doors back in the old
Mhm.
days. And when I told them this, they like their eyes bugged out. They're like, what is it? And it's like, well, when he and his girlfriend moved into the apartment, whoever lived there before them had put nails above every window and door, and they have no idea why anyone would do that. So they took them all down. And I'm
Oh,
like, let me
wow.
guess, that's when all the haunted stuff started. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, because unless you're
Mhm.
into this kind of thing, you wouldn't be aware of that. So you inadvertently open your place up. So I gave him a list of things to do, and I mean, I was like his hero. He messaged me later on one of my videos. I felt like Doctor Strange helping him out with a paranormal problem. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've seen it. Salt and iron, like rusty iron, even better. I've seen that work, or I know of it working, I should say.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's great, when people do find things that help them. I just wasn't so lucky as a child, which like I
Mhm.
said has kind of hindered and helped my view on the paranormal. It helps because it has given me more knowledge, made me be able to relate to people that have gone through that, but also hindered it in the fact that I guess it's made me a little jaded in some areas.
Right. Yeah, I mean, 13 years in this already, it's like there's a lot that probably, or very little that could like really surprise you.
Yeah,
Now,
well, I got that trauma from it, so that was pretty cool.
so now, this is kind of again another out there question. If you could sit down and have a full conversation with one spirit you've encountered, who would it be, and what would be the first question you would ask them?
I mean, this is gonna sound slightly contradictory, but if it was a spirit that I've encountered, I would probably want to know. I mean, as long as he left, I would probably want to talk to the one that was in my haunted house and know why he was stalking me.
I can see that, like where it all began.
Yeah, why? Who are you? Why are you there? And why me?
Okay. So I got a couple of questions left, and then we can wrap it up. So you can, these are kind of like almost bonus round questions. So you've investigated with some of the most well-known names in the field, but is there someone you haven't worked with yet that's on your bucket list?
I mean, yeah, I mean, there's so many people. I mean, I have a friend that I'm going to hopefully investigate with soon, Psychic April. I mean, I would say a lot of the people that I haven't met and have met through like the internet, in my show, I would love to meet them and investigate with because I think there's so much I can learn from a lot of the people that have grown up in these Victorian homes and stuff and have these abilities. And so I would love to investigate with the people that I've met through my show and haven't had the opportunity to.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's and what's I noticed cool having this podcast and the people I've met so far. It's like, man, I would love to work with you or just hang out and have a drink,
Mhm.
but you're 8
Yeah.
states away,
Yeah,
so that might be a
that's
little.
yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. So, I mean, I've met so many incredible people that I would love to investigate with. I mean, some of them I have investigated with, and they've created this like incredible equipment since then that it would be really cool to try. My God, the name's blanking on me, but Ron Yacovetti, Lourdes Gonzalez, and the Rathmans, they work on this device that allows. I think it's mainly Ron who kind of started that one, but they have this device that's really unique, and that's one thing I would like to see in person. So I think there's a lot of people that even I have investigated with that have through the years created some incredible things I would love to see in person.
Yeah. If I may, there's, and if you'd like, I could probably put you in contact with her. I know a couple of people in the LA area. I think that you would, like, seeing you now and having talked to
Mhm.
them, I'm like, I could see these two working together. I could see them, they would jive. One of my earlier guests, her name is Ansley, and she goes by the Spooky Foodie.
Yeah, I just recently met her actually.
Oh, really? Okay, awesome. Yeah, I interviewed her. She was one of my earlier guests a few months back. And also Tammy Rahab Chavez with Holly Weird Paranormal. She's
Oh yeah,
act
yeah.
so yeah, I mean, either of those girls, I've known Tammy for years now. Very, very, really sweet lady. So on the flip side of anyone you would like to work with, is there a dream location you haven't checked out yet? And what makes it so intriguing to you?
Oh my God, there's so many. I mean, like I said, the Roosevelt Hotel, I have a huge fascination with old Hollywood, so I would love to kind of see any of those things. Alcatraz, because my parents didn't take me when I was a child, and I feel still very, very hurt by that. Um, and yeah.
Dad, why didn't you take me?
Yeah, the Boy Scouts got to spend the night there. How will I know if Call of Duty is that accurate? I don't to this day. So I mean, there's places like that. There's so many places in the East Coast. Like I said, some of the homes there are just magnificent. I'm actually working on an investigation right now. I can't really talk about, but if I secure the location, hopefully sooner than later, that's one of like my dream locations. Just based on the history. I mean, across the pond, there's so many incredible places too. So, like Dracula's Castle, Poveglia Island.
Ooh, yeah. Yeah, that one would unsettle me a little bit. Dracula's Castle, totally. I would be there. I have a friend who's Romanian. He's told me all about the place. It sounds awesome. Um, yeah. Now, excuse me. Now, okay, so wrapping up with one of these last questions. If you had to give a TED talk about one of the most misunderstood aspects of the paranormal, what would you focus on?
So I think one thing I also focus on more now as an adult, like I said, living in a haunted house was really traumatizing for me. And when I was younger, like when I was 16 and stuff, even I moved out of that house when I was 11. It was really hard for me to talk about being stalked by a ghost. It was really hard to talk about that kind of focus I had by what essentially was an adult male, even though he was a ghost as a child. And so what I would probably talk about, and I think is something that I really advocate for, is the mental after effects of living in a haunted house or having those experiences, because I do have PTSD from it. And I think that's one thing that's overlooked. And I think it's one thing that, people probably aren't so comfortable talking about. For me, it was genuinely really hard. I was on a show once talking about living in a haunted house, and he said, "You look like you're about to cry." Truthfully, I was about to cry. And I've, kind of learned to deal with it, embrace it. But I think there's so many people that are left with these after effects that they have to deal with forever, even if the haunting's gone. And I think that's one thing that is kind of overshadowed in the field, is what can be left with you after the investigation's done or after the haunted house is gone.
Yeah, because I mean, these kind of encounters with the spirit world, positive or negative, can be, can have an effect on an adult,
Hmm.
someone in their 20s and 30s. You were a young girl, you were a child at the time. So, I mean, it's completely understandable that
Hmm.
could still, you carry that a lot of it, but it doesn't, at least from, talking to you now and seeing your previous interviews, it hasn't beaten you. It didn't, from what I can see, it hasn't got the
Hmm.
best of you. And I think that's a testament to your own character, to your own strength.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, whether a positive's good or bad, the paranormal usually leaves an indelible mark, for better or for worse. And I think, it's kind of overlooked in the sense that I was stalked by a ghost that was a man. But if it was a real person, you pull out a restraining order. You can try and get someone to make this person go away. And you go usually to therapy or something to kind of deal with that trauma. But since so many people may not believe in the ghost, they may think you're crazy or schizophrenic. And I think that's overlooked. And my grandfather, he lived in the house. The house I grew up in was actually where my father grew up, and his father was a paranoid schizophrenic. He was adopted, but his
Right.
adoptive father was a paranoid schizophrenic. And I believe, yes, he was a schizophrenic, but I also believe that the haunting may have kind of pushed him over the edge in his mental illness too. So there's that gray area, and I think just learning kind of what you would deal with in a normal situation of someone being harassed and what you can't deal with. And that's trying to figure out how to move on when you maybe don't have the resources that you would if this was a human person stalking you.
Yeah. Maybe that could be something, if you find a therapist that's open to working with you, something you could start for people, seriously,
Yeah.
because it's trauma is trauma,
Hmm.
whatever it's going to affect you that you can't shake. I mean, regardless of what anyone else thinks, it's real to you.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
and that's one thing I just like to highlight in the paranormal, and I would do a TED talk on probably, is just the things that people don't consider when they go into the field, is, what mark it can leave on you. Like I said, for better or for worse. Not every ghost is bad, and
right.
they can leave a positive effect on you. This is a family member that can visit you and change your whole outlook on life. But those experiences will always change your perspective for better or for worse.
Okay. And last question, are you open to going and searching for Bigfoot?
Well, I think my dad might be Bigfoot, so I could have found him technically. Yeah, I mean, I'm down for, kind of figuring out the other aspects of the field. I would say my top thing I know about in the paranormal, my specialty is ghosts, but I'm open to all possibilities, because who am I to shoot it down? I lived in a haunted house. A lot of people wouldn't believe that. And I
Exactly.
can't say that other people's experiences were wrong because I wasn't the one that experienced them. So I think it would be hypocritical of me to not keep an open mind to everything that's possibly out there.
And if you even go looking for Bigfoot one time, then afterwards you can wear the hat that says "Gone Squatching." Okay.
Well, my dad thinks he saw Bigfoot. I think he looked in a mirror. He said it was in the woods. So, different stories.
All right. Well, Sophia, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for joining me on Beyond the Compass. So where can our listeners and our followers find you online? And if you have anything coming up soon?
Yeah, so we do shows now. They're pre-recorded, but they will air the following week after they were recorded. You can check them out on Blog Talk Radio, iHeartRadio. We just started a Spotify account, so you guys can start looking at shows there. YouTube, you can find some of our past filmed and archive shows. The Ghost Host Sophia Temperilli. You can follow me on Twitter at Sophia Temperilli with one L. At Ghost Host Show, Instagram at Sophia Temperilli, Facebook Sophia Temperilli. Yeah, pretty much anywhere. So yeah, you can check me out at all those places and follow the Ghost Host Show for info on upcoming shows.
Awesome. And for those of you watching this on YouTube, I will provide links to her link tree and all her social media in the video description below. Click on there, start following her, and let her take you on all of her spooky journeys. Sophia, once again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You have been a lovely guest.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I've had a great time.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. This is Eric with Beyond the Compass, where travelers and the paranormal meet at the crossroads. Thank you again, and have an awesome day.